Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world and when you're logging in to listen to our jam session. My name is Jessica Corbo, and I am a resilience expert. I have decided to dedicate my time and my platform to shed light onto some of my favorite warriors around the world. Now, what exactly is a warrior? A warrior is someone who has gone through a journey that not many understand, and even better, since they made it through, they decided to share that journey with other people. And they use that in terms of their vocation, in terms of any kind of passion projects, or just in terms of hosting really cool stuff to test the human capabilities and what we think is the limit, just to realize that we actually don't have any limits. Isn't that kind of cool? So today we're going to be having a jam session with Jacob. He has an incredible story. This session is about resilience in the womb. So you guys are definitely in for a treat. And he is going to kind of walk you through some of his journey and some of his motivations and his why of what he does. And then at the end, we're going to talk about how you guys can get in touch with him and, maybe do some cool stuff together. So with that said, our last conversation was just unbelievable. And I couldn't resist from asking him to share within Mental Health Awareness Month. So Jacob, thank you so much for your time.
Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday. Absolutely. Happy Saturday. So, a
Thank you
little
for
bit,
having me.
absolutely, my pleasure. So, a little bit of background. You are an unbelievable human being, and you have this light about you. And I wanted to share that with everyone else. And as soon as I heard your story of a premature birth, I thought that would be something that could resonate with a lot of people. So, maybe we can start there. Um, Maybe tell us a little bit about early years and how you first learned how to build resilience.
Yeah. So it started even before I came out. As a young child, I would have this dream, and it was recurring. Um, and I told my mom about it a couple of times, and she would always say, "Oh, you just woke up inside me. You drank my medicine." But I had this, what I realize now wasn't a dream. I woke up inside the womb to an argument, and the argument was about getting rid of me. And even though it was never admitted, there was my mom took some medicine to get rid of me, and I was born 3 months premature, 1959. So in a town of about 7,000 people with one hospital that I wouldn't go to today. And so
Mhm.
I'm a walking miracle. And I realized later on in life, but that, I'm not, I didn't just make it. I'm here for a reason and for a purpose. And it's been, since that moment, it's been pretty magical.
Absolutely. I think that's incredible because I think a lot of times in our journey, we kind of suppress a lot of things when we're a child and we think, oh, everything is kind of like okay, and we don't have a whole lot of memories. So the fact that you're able to remember different instances when you're in the womb, I think is absolutely incredible. How did you develop that type of awareness?
Well, I think we're all given the gift.
Hmm.
It's really about the more I trusted it,
Hmm.
the more it revealed itself, and the more that I trusted it, and the more it revealed, the more activated it became. So it still helps me today, and it will help everybody. The more that you trust your intuition,
Hmm.
the louder it speaks, or the easier we hear it. One of the two. Um,
Absolutely.
but it again, 3 months premature is when I woke up.
Mhm.
And my life outside of the womb was pretty isolated for the first 3 months. I was in an incubator, and they didn't think I was going to live, and I was given, at that time, last rites because of their religion. And I had to be named quickly, and there were all these things that showed up. And then even throughout my early childhood, I'd say 3 to 5 years old,
Mhm.
I heard things that questioned whether I was my father's son or not. So I also grew up with this like doubt and hesitation up into my adult life,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's incredible. I'm a firm believer that the soul is having a human experience. So I think that we're just a whole bunch of souls that are like, oh, this looks like a good manifestation to kind of be born into. What are the lessons? And then off you go. And I think to have that kind of connection, for me at least, a lot of it is you come in knowing, right? And then when you get conditioned, it's the people around you, it's the society, it's the noise, it's the music. I mean, anything, the food that you eat, it's everything that kind of puts in all of those barriers that make it harder for you to understand yourself. And so maybe that 3 months of isolation was good for you because it kind of calloused your sense of self with knowing how to accept yourself and reject what other people were trying to make you.
Yeah, well, that it definitely, in retrospect now, it was
Mhm.
a blessing, not a curse.
Absolutely.
Also, in growing up, it took a while for my immune system to really get strong. And, my first 5 years, I was a fairly sickly kid,
Hmm.
so I was alone a lot because I was sick.
Hmm.
So you learn that independence. But one of the things that kids do
Hmm.
is we have these imaginary friends sometimes. And for mine, I realized later in life, those were guides.
Hmm.
I had these, and they're still the same. There's a Native American, and it's not like this clear picture of this person,
Yeah.
but just this presence
Yeah.
that's
I get
always
goosebumps,
around.
goosebumps when you talk about
Oh, me too. Me too.
that.
Yeah.
I'm like,
So,
we're speaking the same language.
but it validates what you said, which is, we're born pure. We're born
Mhm.
with everything that's required. We have this, like, that thing inside that just knows what to do. It's like we all hear the analogy of the acorn and the oak tree.
Mhm.
We have this infinite intelligence inside of us that knows. And what we do as adults, what do we do? Is we unravel all the stuff that got wrapped around us
Absolutely.
so that we get back to that place.
Yeah.
And hopefully we all do.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I think that there's a really big difference between if you look at different cultures and different societies that, promote going outside, right? So there's some places, I can't remember exactly which countries off the top of my head, but somewhere up in Europe, they have a lot of outdoor activities. So the children are learning not only inside the classroom, but they're going out and learning in nature. And so they're learning about, anatomy or science rather than like the textbooks and dissecting pigs and stuff like that. They're outside looking at how things decompose and how things kind of open up and, you know, come back to, you know, in different forms. And in the US, we're doing different things like baby shark, not knocking the baby shark, but it's
right.
completely
Yeah.
different.
Well, it's the whole pass fail thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
why does somebody pass and other people have to fail? And,
Yeah.
to me, it's about discovery. One of the things
The
that,
curiosity.
I felt really attracted to, and I realized that, if you believe in past lives, I've had them, and
Mhm.
it's been closer to the native people's side of life than not.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really fascinate me about their learning was they would go observe nature and animals and learn from that experience.
Yeah.
Learn how to be patient when they see an animal and when it's
Mhm.
hunting for its food, or how something grows. And I think that we all have that ability to learn on a deep level if we take the time to do it. But we're
Yeah.
conditioned with this pass fail, and somebody has to be inferior,
Yeah.
and I just don't agree with it.
Yeah. I mean, every time we have, a victim and the oppressor, it's polarized. Everyone has a predator inside them and everyone has a victim inside them. This is the yin and the yang, the dark and the light. This is the balance. And so I think to have everything as ultimates are very, I guess, dangerous for society because we look at things as literal black and white and life is anything but. And I can say that because I used to be one of those people. I'm like, no, you're the right or you're wrong. I'm like, ah. I've
Yeah.
changed my perspective. And I think that a lot of that is from my own personal journey because as I decided to increase my consciousness, I'm far from perfect. I'm just on my mission. I'm on my own journey. Right. And as I continue, sometimes I get into that space where it feels like a dream. I don't know if this is something from this physical life or if it's from a previous life. Again, tapping into the soul having a human experience. And for me, I was able to kind of feel and experience a lot of generational trauma. So I could have my experience whilst also understanding and simultaneously kind of feeling the journey of my mother and my grandmother and so forth. So was that something that kind of like happened with you as you're going through the whole like womb experience and the first couple of years, because those are informative years of you for you as well?
Yeah, they definitely were. And I did. I just, I had these, like I said, for me, I interpreted them as dreams coming
Mhm.
through. And when I would express them outside, I was told that either to discount it or that it wasn't, oh, this didn't happen. This is what really happened. And
But
uh, yeah, inside I knew. But, one of the things to really understand about all of this is that we all have what's required, and
yeah,
it's always an inside job. Like
yeah.
we're taught to seek from the outside,
Mhm.
but really when we all like get we
Yeah,
realize, man, it's always been here. And
absolutely.
what our job is just to really, if you don't get anything from our conversation today, at least get that you're enough, right? That you
Absolutely,
have
100%.
everything that's required. All that we have to do is trust it enough to
Yeah.
put it out there. Just take one step, and
Mhm.
the first step is the scariest,
Yeah.
and we were talking a little bit earlier because I sent Jess a fire walking picture yesterday. That
Mhm.
I'm a fire walk instructor, and I love walking the fire because of what it teaches me.
Mhm.
And that first step is always the toughest. And once you're walking, you're realizing, oh, I'm walking hot coals, and then you're in, and it's like, oh my God, I did this, And
Absolutely.
that first step is always the scariest,
Yeah.
and it's not even fear. If we
Mhm.
were afraid of it, whatever it is that you're facing, if you were really afraid of it, you'd
Mhm.
run away. You
Mhm.
wouldn't stay there and like work up to go do it or say
Mhm.
it or whatever it is. So
The
just
unknown.
yeah,
It's
misinterpreting that feeling.
mhm.
Everybody calls it fear. It's not always fear. Sometimes our body just knows what it's doing, and
Mhm.
it's working all that energy that's required to have us do that thing. And that's what it feels
Absolutely.
like because it's weird.
I love that because I think, a lot of the people that I talk with, it's embracing it with enthusiasm. Because when you're a child and you have Christmas, I mean, everyone celebrates different holidays, but just say Christmas as an example. You don't know what's inside your presents. You don't know what's inside everything, but you're excited and you're just like, oh my goodness, I get to, and you're, frantically ripping open these boxes to see what's inside. That's that curiosity. And then as adults, the same as what you're talking about is something happens, whether it's society, personal, whatever, and we aren't as enthusiastic with opening up that box to seeing what's inside. We're like, wait a second, who gave me that box? What is their intention? What could
Yeah.
possibly be in this box? And the mind, it's so incredible on how it's always trying to protect us, or it thinks it needs to protect us, but really when we get back into our body, we are enough, we have everything, and there's nothing to be protected of from, because we're already protected, if that kind of oversimplifies it a little bit for our
Oh no,
audience.
it explains it 100% in clarity is really what it does.
Yeah.
Our brains are their processors,
Mm-hmm.
and they are there to keep us a little bit on the safe side so that we don't go out and say, oh, look at that friendly grizzly bear. It's like, and then it
Absolutely.
teaches us, oh, if we accidentally do that and we don't listen to the signals, it's like, oh, run. It's like it teaches
Absolutely.
us to do that. So it is
Absolutely.
about learning how to trust that and then acting on the trust,
Mm-hmm.
and we do that in relationships with other people, but we don't stop a lot of times and do it with ourselves enough.
Yeah. Yeah. The best relationship and the most important relationship is the one with ourselves. If we're not straight with ourselves, we can't come correct with anyone else. And I guess taking a step back, I really want to tap into, you said that you were born 3 months premature, right?
Mhm.
So 3 months premature, normal gestation for a human being is 9 months. So 3 months is only into 2 trimesters. So from a developmental age, let's tap into that resilience. Your soul is having a human experience, decides we don't want to wait the whole 9 months. We're going to make it more efficient.
Right. There
Hello,
is some of
world.
that. There is some of that. And I've had to learn over time how to
Yeah.
grow into patience a little bit more for sure. Um,
There's nothing wrong with wanting things done.
so, well, yeah, I would take it to like, come on, I can't wait anymore sometimes. But I think one of the gifts I was given from it is that I'm willing to do things that people just think of doing.
Yeah.
more than anything. I still have this group of friends that we've been
Mhm.
friends since third grade,
Mhm.
which is like phenomenal.
Mhm.
There's six of us, and I was the one that never stuck with the same group. I would go venture on the other side of the tracks or
Yeah.
do this. I'm the one that at 18 said, I don't want the factory job that pays me at the time three
Mhm.
times more than I could make anywhere else. There's other things I have to do. So I was more willing to follow a path that wasn't worn in regards to that. So I
Less
think that
travel.
that's one of the gifts that I've gotten from it, um, is that ability. Also, being okay with being with myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I
I
think
had to
that's
be.
big. That's big. A lot of
Yeah.
people, they struggle with rejection. And I think that's why they conform, because taking the path less traveled is scary for a lot of people. And when you're okay with yourself, it's the best company. You're just like, this is amazing. I'm never alone. This is me, myself, and I. And
Yeah.
then other people join even better.
Yeah. Right. That's frosting on the cake. Right. But we got
Yeah,
to remember we're the cake. So,
absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
I grew into some of this as well because I was influenced by culture and
Yeah.
society and my family and everything else, and it was, for me, they couldn't figure out, like, I was the first one to graduate from high school, and they were like, go work at the factory, and I'm like, I don't want to work at the factory. I want to go to college. I wasn't able to do that, so I figured, well, what can I do that gets me away?
Right.
And it
And
wasn't
you
because
grew
I
up
was
and you grew
running.
up in the States too, right?
Yeah, I grew up near Detroit in Toledo, Ohio.
So this is relatable for a lot of people because it's not like you grew up on, like a farm or in the sticks or something. You're, growing up in places that are comparable to other people. And I think that just shows that mental, discipline and intention.
Yeah, well, it definitely took a lot of learning along the way, and just being
Mhm.
willing, to get sometimes bloody and bruised and get back up and still kept going. And I think my inner compass, right? That inner thing that we learn to trust. I think that's one of the things that I was gifted with early because I had to rely on myself for the first
Yeah.
3 months. It was
Yeah.
no touch.
Yeah.
Back then in an incubator, they used the gloves. They didn't touch you, even
Yeah.
your skin,
Yeah.
except the nurse maybe to change you. But
You got to
so I think,
self-soothe.
yeah, I think that in the long run benefited me. And
Mhm.
it also answered a question. When I was young, I used to like being inside of a box or something really enclosed and tight.
Yeah.
And again, it was just probably like going back home, right?
Yeah,
To my,
absolutely. Yeah, we default into our comfort zone 100%,
yeah.
100%. I think it's very interesting. So, let's talk a little bit about, okay, self-soothing. You're very, very efficient with coming out. Very, like, let's do this, 2 trimesters in. You had the first couple of months, kind of to soothe yourself and everything. And once you were able to be around your family, what type of things, like what type of environment? So if you're the first one to graduate high school, and if a lot of people were kind of like factory workers, that was kind of like the
Mhm.
expectation. Did you guys have a lot of, what type of foods did you eat? What type of, did you guys have TV? Like, what were the extracurriculars? Kind of what was the environment like for you?
Yeah. So it was relatively typical lower middle class.
Mm-hmm.
My mother had, I think, a sixth or seventh grade education and went to work early. She
Mm-hmm.
was a depression kid. Um, And then I was the next generation after that, which
Mm-hmm.
was, I was born in 1959.
Mm-hmm.
And, um, we didn't have a lot, but we were always together and family was tight. And my mom was Mexican and Irish, and my dad was Puerto Rican. So I had
Beautiful
both
mixes.
cultures for a while. And my dad died at 5,
Mm-hmm.
so I lost that. And then I got separated from my brother, and some abuse came down the road, both physical and then sexual and all kinds of stuff. So I lived a few lifetimes between 6 months old and 8 years old. I'd
Yeah.
say probably 3 lifetimes for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, tapping into the economic situation, I think a lot of people automatically assume that money equals intelligence, or money equals experiences, and money equals some kind of privilege. And I personally am on the other side with it's what you make of it. So I personally know a lot of people that don't come from, they come from very humble beginnings, but they're the most inquisitive, they're the most creative, they're the most exploratory on so many levels, and they ask those deeper level questions. You're like, wait a second, I don't give me a second, let me think about this. And like the philosophical minds, if you will. And sometimes that also comes at a price where if you have that mind and everyone else doesn't, you can think that you're crazy.
Oh, yeah. Well, here's a great example of that.
Sorry, we even
So,
have the sirens are singing for you.
yeah,
You
that's
even
right. I
have
was like, oh, here they come. Yeah.
it.
So,
They're like big
but
party. Let's
yeah,
get it going.
here's a great example of what you just said. So I went to a Catholic grade school,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to be a server, which the kids that serve the mass. And while we were in class, I raised my hand and I asked the priest, I said, I don't understand why we're born with sin. If we're from love and we're pure, and I'm in third grade or fourth grade,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I don't agree with that. And you're blasphemous and blah, blah, blah. You can't be a server.
Yeah.
Right. So I
Yeah.
was like ostracized for my thought. And
Yeah.
to this day, I'm like, I don't agree with it. Like, what, how can you be born wrong or,
Yeah.
impure?
Yeah.
Um, and so, that was kind of like the start of that, like voicing out a little bit.
Yeah.
It shut me down a little because it was embarrassing, and it was,
Mm-hmm.
really a big deal to be a server, and I was the only one that wasn't. And
Yeah.
so there was that part of it, the ego side that got bruised.
Mm-hmm.
But I still had the questions. And
Mm-hmm.
so what it did was that actually threw, pun intended, fire on my questions,
Yeah.
which is like, well,
Absolutely.
then why did he shut me down so fast? And then to top it off, the next thing was a couple years later, it was Lent, and no, used to be no meat on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And we're playing around, and, and we go by the priest house and we look in the basement, and he's down there having roast beef on Friday, right? So I was like, this is bullshit, like, so it kind of like from that was probably about sixth grade or so.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, I don't believe any of this now,
Yeah. All those constructs in your mind, you're
Oh
like, wait
yeah,
a
it totally
second.
tore him away, man. I'm like, this bull crap.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's so incredibly important to constantly question, everything. I think that, you know, so many, I want to give you like such a big compliment, and I don't even know how to articulate the compliment that I would like to give you.
Oh, thanks.
Because for me, resilience is the ability to bounce back from something as quickly as possible. I don't agree with that definition. I think that that might be how it's easy to frame it, but I don't think that you ever really have to bounce from anything. I think you flow through things. And when you get stuck, it's because you have that ego trying to control what you think a situation should be. Whereas when you've done that ego work and you're not coming from ego, there's nothing to bounce from, because you're just like, ooh, this is for me. Ooh, that's not for me. Ooh, what can I learn? Ooh, what is that? And there's no bouncing. It's ebbing and flowing. And I think
I love that.
with all of your experiences, whether it be the premature birth, whether it be the underdeveloped, entire system, and having to strengthen that, whether it's the community, whether it's the family, you briefly touched on violence. That's not easy when you're little. That's enough to destroy a lot of systems, because especially if it's something that happened within your family, here you are born into places where you're supposed to feel safe. And if that's violated, you are literally on your own, because you're in survival mode rather than and trying to protect yourself, rather than, oh, this was just a thing. And it's an incredible, I guess, consistency and resilience. And I would like to honor that, if we could just take a moment to just kind of put this into perspective.
Yeah,
So,
thanks.
yes.
Thanks. And I think for myself included, but anybody that
Yeah.
has gone through that, to take time to honor
Mhm.
that, because I don't think that we do enough. I would say for my own self, I haven't honored that to the level of honor that it deserves. Because it'd be so um, easy to do, difficult emotionally and mentally to accept, to just stay down,
Yeah.
to accept that, I was this, I was that, or I'm supposed to be here or there.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing to remember is, what was the biggest difference? And it was that I just mentally made a decision
Mm-hmm.
that I was going to attempt something else. I didn't have the answers, I didn't have the plans. I just knew that there was something different. And for whatever reason, I went with it.
Yeah.
So, anybody experiencing this, anybody feeling
Yeah.
this, like the answers are inside. And the biggest difference for anything, like I teach people how to create massive success now.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest difference that happens is the way they think, not what they do, not how much more
The
money they put
mindset.
into something.
It's
It's
the
the way that
mindset.
they approach it mentally changes
See,
the whole outcome,
they're
right?
saying congratulations again. Can you hear
That's
that?
right. That's right. And
Like
so,
big party, yeah.
yeah, but how we approach this, like we have it inside of us to change anything.
Yeah.
And it starts with word. What's the words that we're using? And for me, there was always this possibility. I used to
Mm-hmm.
ride my bike from the lowest end of town where I lived down this road called River Road.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all these palatial homes and old Victorians, and they're on the river and they're beautiful. And I was like, I'm going to figure out how to live here one day. I didn't know how, I didn't do anything. That's all I did was set this little intention on my bike, and I'd ride down there. And then one day I realized I was looking for a home on River Road.
Yeah. It's a
It was
stretch
like,
goal. A lot of
oh,
people don't understand that a stretch goal is something that you don't have the capabilities of doing at this exact moment, but it's something that's going to keep you and propel you moving forward. And the journey is the fun. This is where you develop all those tools to get to that finish line.
and we don't have to have all the answers. We just have
Yeah,
to have the willingness to take the next step. That's it.
absolutely.
Like
Absolutely. I
if
think that's,
there's
I think
people
it's
ask me
brilliant.
what's this big secret, and I'm like, be willing to take the next step. You don't even have to know if
Consistency,
it's the right one,
consistency.
right?
Just don't give up, one day at a time. That's it.
Right. Yeah, it is, right. There's something to the 12-step thing,
Right,
one
right.
day at a time.
Absolutely. 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 I think, for me, tapping into that, I have a very strong international community. I have plenty of friends that will open up their door if I showed up with a suitcase, or if I called them in tears and just said, things are falling apart and I need help. They wouldn't ask a single question. They would just say, do you need me to send you a flight? Where exactly are you? Maybe even send me a plane, and then everything is taken care of. And I took some of that for granted because I didn't realize the importance of having that type of community until I came back to the US. Because when I came back to the US, that's when I started my conscious journey, the intentional form of it. And I wasn't working, and it was 100% dedicated to my healing, or to my growth, or to figuring out all these different family dynamics. So, you being able to do that, here's another compliment, you being able to do that as a kid, me doing it in my 30s, my goodness, I thought I was going to lose the plot, go crazy. And I was like, what?
Right.
And so for anyone else doing like their awakening journey or journey to self, and shedding all those different layers and figuring out all the different types of conditioning, and questioning what is reality, and questioning themselves, and just redefining every single aspect of your world, this isn't easy work. It's not easy by any means. And you did it as a kid. Who does that? Another
Well,
moment to,
yeah, thanks. But, I didn't know any better. And,
yeah,
part of the gift of being ignored
yeah,
was I didn't have people telling me a bunch of stuff either.
yeah. You
You
didn't have
know,
to work through that, the relearning, because the starting line was a little bit different, and you're able to maintain that. Whereas I
I had
had
a
30
bunch of
years,
relearning to do.
I had 30 years of like things to unlearn. I'm like, I don't know if this is actually right.
No, I did. I had a bunch of things to relearn. I mean, even, if I go backwards on the scale, in my 50s, I learned how to speak
Yeah,
truth to
yeah.
myself first and then to others, because
Third
until I
eye.
could do it for myself, I wasn't doing it fully. I
Yeah.
realized at one point, and this is true, I was in my 50s.
Mhm.
I have 40-year relationships.
Mhm.
No one knew all of me. Nobody.
That's a sign of a strong person because you have that armor up. And even when people say you can trust me, you're like famous last words. You're the first person I
That's
should be
right.
trusting.
But the
Go ahead,
gift
tell
of
me
that,
why you think that's a good
yeah,
idea.
that's right. The gift of that reveal
Yeah,
was I finally learned how to fully open my heart.
I love
When
it.
I did,
Mhm.
for the first time in my life, I knew what real happiness to me felt like.
Yeah,
Since that time, I walk around open hearted. That's why people go, "Oh my God, you're so blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, I've been a work and I'll continue to be until I end, a
yeah,
work in progress. But it took
absolutely.
me that long to find my voice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's like third eye right there, right? So when you're
Yeah.
able to come from a place of pure strength where you can speak your truth and be okay if people accept it, these are people that are part of your tribe. And if they don't, there's there's nothing wrong with them. It's just it's different wavelengths. And maybe the paths will flow, but that somehow they ebb and everything is kind of like moving. And I think from a society perspective, this is a problem that we get ourselves into a lot as well. Going back into the good and bad, I don't agree with that. And a lot of people, they think, oh, this is bad behavior. Well, everyone makes mistakes. Did you learn something from it? Are you taking it as a learning and applying it to maybe be a little bit better, just a tad?
Just a
And
bit.
then yeah, and then kind of continue to go through that. And I think, another compliment to you is the fact that, to me, another element of resilience is being able to find that lesson in everything and stick with that North Star. So, whatever that North Star is for you, I think it's an incredible journey because everything is either okay, if it feels good and if it seems easy, this is the path, and we're going to expand into that. If it's difficult, why is this difficult? What is my learning? What am I supposed to extract from the situation? Okay, now that I learned it, wow, so much easier. And watch this ebb and flow and expand again. And I think that's like maybe you're willing to share kind of what your North Star is, through all of this journey, keeping that heart open when you decided to open up at 40. What was that moment for you?
Yeah, well, one of them was learning how to be unconditional
Mm-hmm.
because we're taught to be conditional.
Mm-hmm. Are
If
you
you
talking about
do,
with self or with others?
well, I think unconditional starts with us and then with everybody else. My lesson was at an event.
Mm-hmm.
I was 40. I was 40.
Mm-hmm.
I had my stepkids who were 13, 11, and 13 or 14. And it was this millionaire mindset. I wanted to teach them the difference in money, not how to create millions and be all this materialistic, but the difference of how money works and to value money in a different way.
Money is energy.
Well, money is nothing. It just enhances things.
It's just
It
energy. It's
expands my
exchange.
joy because I can
Yeah.
share it with you or do this, or it makes
Yeah.
things easier. But in and of itself, to me, it's, a pile
Yeah.
of paper and coin. But anyways, they were like, "Hey, how many of you love to give something?" And I'd rather give than receive. And I'm raising my hands to all these questions. And
Yeah.
if you give something, you expect at least a thank you, which you think is customary. And yeah, I believed all that. And
Mm-hmm.
if somebody asks you if you want a party, you usually go, "No, I'm good." Don't take your time. I'm good. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
what would you like for Christmas? Nothing I can think of. Whatever you get's going to be okay. And then when you get it, you're like, why did they give me this color tie? I don't even wear that color, and I haven't wore a tie in 6 months. And so he's saying all this stuff, and I'm agreeing and
Yeah.
having that conversation. And
Yeah.
at the end, the guy said, "You selfish SOBs.
Mm-hmm.
How dare you expect joy when you give to someone, and
Mm-hmm.
you steal all their joy when they try to give to you?"
Yeah.
He said, "I don't care if they give you the same effing necktie every single year.
Yeah.
They took time out of their life, money out of their pocket, and thought enough of you to get you that gift.
Yeah.
You appreciate that."
Absolutely.
And I was 40. My dad
Mm-hmm.
died when I was 5. I
Mm-hmm.
believed at 5 when I was told on the way home after my dad passed away
Mm-hmm.
that big boys don't cry. So I never cried.
Mm-hmm.
I went through guilt not crying. because my grandfather died who I loved and I couldn't cry.
Mhm.
But anyways, that night I apologized to my two daughters and wife for stealing
Mhm.
their joy. And it was the first time I cried without being hurt
Mhm.
since I was 5. And from
Wow.
that moment on, I learned how to give unconditionally,
Yeah.
but I also, more importantly, I learned how to receive
Mhm.
unconditionally.
Yeah.
And it totally changed the dynamic of not just our relationship, but my relationship with everyone,
Yeah.
and how I gave and how I received.
Yeah. I think that's
It's
super
amazing.
powerful and super important because I think a lot of times, especially in context of abuse, right? Such a heavy topic, such a heavy
It is.
topic. We are Our system is compromised into knowing what is healthy. Things are normalized that should never have been normalized. And then we are conditioned to not express ourselves. We're conditioned to be conditional because we have to shut down parts of ourselves in order to not trigger people around us. So we become hypersensitive and hyper vigilant, and we lose part of ourselves in order to play this role as to not disrupt the harmony of others, which in reality is just the lack of self-control and emotional regulation of others. And it's as simple as that. And when we're in those environments and we have to shut down and we learn to shut down those parts of ourselves, it is one of the most bittersweet journeys to fall in love with ourselves again. And a lot of people can say that's narcissistic, but it's not, because we've betrayed ourselves. We've shut down certain parts to as a man, it was probably the stoicism. Men don't cry, boys don't cry, big boys don't cry,
Right.
something like this, right? That emotions are a fundamental part of being human. Our ability to express ourselves is what makes us different from animals. And
Right.
so when that shut down, you're like, wait a second, this is a fundamental thing that I'm not able to do. And it has big effects, and people don't realize that because this is part of the social conditioning that has been normalized. And so I would just like to, again, like honor that, because that is such a big, important part of, being unconditional. That's why I asked, like, unconditional with who? Because everything starts inside, and it's like, trying to figure out what are my quirks, what are the things that I actually love about myself. And once you have that resolve, no one can take that away from you.
Yeah,
No one.
that's right.
And
No,
just a
and I think that's just really important, especially with this topic and this month here,
mhm,
that we just slow down and just be aware. You
yeah,
know, how are you feeling? What is it that you really want?
check in
what
with
What do
yourself.
you really desire?
Check in with yourself,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and checking in, and even it doesn't matter if it's personal, business, whatever it is. It's about taking a moment and really understanding and appreciating. We all hear it's the journey, it's not the destination, but yet how many of us just go through this journey and, like, you don't even. I remember hiking up a mountain and
Mhm,
being so focused on this much in front of me that I
mhm,
was missing this expansive view all around, going, oh my God. So I'd take like
yeah.
5 steps and stop and go, oh my God, this is amazing. And then, so, what took you so long? And it's like, God, you should have been on my trip. It was the best.
My journey was
Um,
kind of amazing, not gonna lie.
yeah.
Do you have pictures?
So,
Nope. In
but
here.
it's coming to an understanding with ourselves, being
Yeah.
okay, like, giving ourselves, not being. We don't require to be a critic.
Yeah.
We know, well, what's
Yeah.
wrong with being okay with us instead of being a critic of ourselves?
Yeah.
Because once you get okay, it doesn't matter what others say or do, because you're okay.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
why the word's so awesome. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm okay. It's like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Stay okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
I think a lot of people can benefit from that because, on so many different levels. Number one, when you check in with yourself, then you're able to evaluate the surroundings that you're in. Are you in because you're people pleasing? Are you in because
right.
it's actually something that brings you joy? How do you know what joy is? How do you define joy? What's the difference between happiness versus joy? One's, my personal opinion is happiness is kind of fleeting and it's based on external, whereas joy comes from within. I don't know if that's right, but that's not how I define it.
I like
And
it.
when you define it from that way, it's again having that resolve with the strength of who you are. And I think no matter what, as long as you're not hurting anybody, whatever that is that you define as you is amazing.
It is. And there's so many times when we stop and slow down and take a look
Yeah.
at someone,
Yeah.
um, and really see their beauty,
Hmm.
how beautiful they really are.
Yeah, it's the heart. It's the, I mean, side tangents and stuff like that. I was born into this world with a very good vehicle. And it's a bittersweet because a lot of people, they see the vehicle before the heart, before the engine.
Yeah.
And that's one of my struggles because people will think, oh, you got a job because of your looks. Oh, you did this. Who did you sleep with? That type of thing, because this is what girls have to deal with, right? Guys have to deal with different. On the other side, guys have to deal with maybe not being allowed to show, because it's the toxic masculinity. So they're not allowed to show like their emotions. Both sides are shutting down a part of yourself because other women, guys might be able to show their sexuality, or other women might be able to show their sexuality, but it's interpreted differently. And how it's
Yeah.
interpreted has an effect on how we internalize everything. So I think, a couple different examples of how to apply it and how society has such a big effect if you're not careful and conscious. I think being able to check in with ourselves is one of the most powerful things. And it's number one, how am I feeling and why am I feeling this way? If you come from trauma and you're open about it, then am I having a trauma response? Is this something that is because of something previous, or is it because of the actual event that I'm experiencing at this exact moment? Um, do I enjoy the people that I'm around? Do I feel safe around them? Do I like them? Like, do I get the wrinkles in the forehead, or do I get the wrinkles in the side?
That's right.
I mean, so many different things that we can ask ourselves to kind of like, slow it down. And if we're looking for different ways, I personally like to explain to people when they're slow enough and when they're in alignment, they can start to see animals being attracted to them. So if you're walking down the street and a dog is, trying to sniff and say, hey, how's it going? They can sense energy. If a bird is coming by you, or if you're walking past like geese or something like that, if they fly, your energy's off. If you can walk near them and they're not bothered by you, you're on. And those are like things that you can kind of spot check if you're not sure, or even looking up at the clouds and you can see the different levels. So for you, when you're working with people, or just when you're trying to explain different things, how do you have these philosophical concepts into a human experience context to help them understand?
Yeah, well, first, because I'm a coach, I ask for permission. Hey, I have something to share. Are you open to it? Um, and
Consent
then
is
I
always
just,
important.
yeah, well, asking for permission as a coach is part of the training.
Yeah.
But I also learned how to do it with my kids too, my two daughters. I just said, are you just telling me something or would you like some advice? And 90% of the time, nah, I just want to tell you. So it's
Yeah.
about trusting, but also not imposing my
Hmm.
things on them because it's my thing
Yeah.
until I share it. And then you
Hmm.
get to either just listen to it and let it bounce off, or you absorb it and now it becomes part of yours.
Yeah.
But I think that, it's for me, it's asking for permission,
Hmm.
which I think is a good thing just in general, so that
Yeah.
I've learned,
Yeah.
along the way. And then it's just, knowing that, hey, this is my interpretation of it. And
Hmm.
then I usually say, what do you think about it?
Yeah.
And what that does is that activates their side of it.
Yeah.
And it either unites with it or it's different, but it's all okay as long as I'm not attached to, oh no, it has to be this way, that
Yeah.
then that's a different space.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, because I think I deal with a lot of kind of like busy professionals that need quantifiable, these A-type Iron Man personalities, or we're all up
Drivers,
here and
right.
we're just like, okay, to get there, we gotta do baby steps. So how can I quantify this? How do I quantify slowing down? I'm like, okay, let's do this. And so I think our markets are a little different, but yes, the intention is all the same.
Yeah, I
So
could
I love
handle those guys too. I do work with a
absolutely.
few of them, and a lot of times for me, it's called a pattern interruption. You
Yeah,
interrupt their pattern,
yeah,
and I'll say, stop. Do you
yeah,
really like? Are you really believing all of this?
yeah, yeah,
And then they're like,
absolutely.
what do you mean? And I go, you can't, like, you don't even remember because you're just like rattling off this thing. It's like, tell me
Yeah,
where you're really at.
Yeah,
not what you think I need to
absolutely.
hear.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
that's where they slow down.
Yeah. No, I think it's very, very, very powerful. So shifting through, being able to, again, a little bit of a recap, being super duper efficient and yeah, enthusiastic about entering this human experience and then being able to kind of ebb and flow through all of it through, premature birth, through not being able to have that touch for the first couple of months, being kind of, a little bit isolated from, social settings and stuff like that, having a family that maybe doesn't understand the same depth, and then being inquisitive, which, with the church, that was third grade, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So within third grade, and just having a little bit more of an expansive mind, and almost consistently being that square peg in the round hole, and being able to have that guiding light, to just want to use all these different life lessons to help and empower other people. Let's kind of talk a little bit more. We briefly touched on it, on what you do professionally and how you've been able to use all of this in order to empower others. You have workshops, like experience-based workshops, like the fire walking, and then you do some coaching, like one-on-one. Tell me a little bit more about your professional side.
Yeah, so on the coaching business side, I work with entrepreneurs and coaches,
Mm-hmm.
and really just help them, not necessarily create their business, but take it to a level where they have enough income coming in. Uh, they're really structured properly where they can start delegating out some of their work. So they're not the doer of all.
Yeah.
A lot of times people will create a business and then they create a job that they can't get out of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how I got into coaching. Was my first coach was my first business. I had meteoric success. We did over 1 million the first year, but I sent my family to Disney World without me because I couldn't get away.
Yeah.
And then the second time it happened, I realized this has to change.
Yeah.
And that's really was the beginning of like, how do I figure this out so I can get away from this,
Yeah.
still have it run the same or better. It actually
Yeah.
ran better
Yeah.
without me in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we hear work on your business, not in it. And I just figured that out. So that's how I help coaches and entrepreneurs.
Cool.
How I help my clients, but also other people, is through these experiential retreats or events that will start back up in 2022.
Nice.
And I got trained by the same people that trained Tony Robbins and T. Harv Eker and all the big people that you talk about to firewalk.
Yeah.
And everyone that I knew does it as a culminating experience at the end of an event.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that was my introduction to it.
Yeah.
And so, but when I went back to my business 2 days
Mm-hmm.
later, my assistant burst through my door and says, her eyes are this big, we got a big problem. And my initial thought was, this isn't anything. 2 days ago, I walked 36 feet on hot coals. That was a
Perspective.
problem.
Perspective.
So it totally, and I go, oh, there's something here. And the way I handled big problems from that point on was totally different.
Yeah.
So what I did was I got certified
Mm-hmm.
um, to train people how to
Mm-hmm.
walk through them safely, how to do, break an arrow with your throat, break a brick the first time you've ever broken anything, break a
Yeah.
board, break a flaming board,
Yeah.
all these crazy things that on the surface seem crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But that what I do is I teach you how to take it with you when you leave and how to
Mm-hmm.
use that experience to handle what shows up in life.
Yeah.
Because we can't predict what shows up, but
No,
we can always control our response to it after the initial reaction.
absolutely.
And this is what I teach in my
Absolutely.
events.
Absolutely. It's always crazy until done.
Right. That's right.
Always. I still remember the first time I was training for Ironman, and my first Ironman, I crossed the finish line in 12 hours and 18 minutes. And the entire time, people were throughout the year of training, people were laughing at me, and they were just like, that's crazy. Like, why are you doing this? And it was, no problem, no problem. You don't entertain it. So you're just like, all right, cool. That's your perspective. You want to do this? Let's do this. But otherwise, that's you. This is me. And I remember thinking at one point, I was like, maybe I am crazy. And I'm like, you know
Hmm.
what? Heck yes, dude. Heck yes. Like everyone's telling me only 15 hours, 16 hours, you'll be lucky to get 17-hour finish. You're a 400 runner, you can't do it. And when I finished at 12 hours, the people that said I was crazy and I couldn't do it, those were the first ones. Here's my medal.
Yeah,
And
right.
I was like, do you guys want to train with me? I'll show you how to, embrace
Right.
crazy.
That's right.
You turn into something fun because it's just, I mean, depending on how you frame that, I used to think that crazy was a very negative connotation. And I took the society association with it with, oh, girls are crazy. Boys are stupid, girls are crazy. I don't even know who started that one, but I grew up with that all the time. And it controls your emotions because you don't want to share certain things because it seems like you're in a little bit of a gerbil's wheel or that you are in fact crazy. So a lot of women we called bipolar. Oh, that was super bipolar. Oh, because emotional expression. In context, there's nothing wrong with them. This is just an
Right.
expression of something, right? And so now I love the word crazy because every time I don't hear it, I tell myself, you're not playing big enough. Why aren't you challenging things more? And then when I hear it, I'm like, all right, cool. I'm
There
on
you go.
path.
I love it. So that's like your active word, right? Getting you
100%.
activated, you know.
Yeah, no one's called me crazy this week. I'm not playing big enough. What am I doing?
I love it. I love it for
Oh,
sure.
I love
And
it.
I approach it, in similar ways. It's like if I'm not feeling this, like, holy crap, why did I say yes to doing this?
Mhm.
And this fear that comes up, and the palms are sweaty, and it's like, if I don't have that at least, one event a year or something like that, I feel something's missing because for the last 20 years, I've done a lot of things that were perceived crazy to other
Yeah.
people. But
Yeah.
for me, it was like, Anna, putting me on the edge. And this is where I like to be, just to prove to myself occasionally that, hey, look, I can do it. And
Yeah.
here's how I'm going to use it when I leave.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's a really important part too, on how once you go through that experience, being able to connect it to how that lesson can be applied to everything is super important. And I think a lot of people, they forget to make that connection.
Yeah.
And when you make the connection, this is an empowering thing. If you don't make the connection, you actually make them kind of dependent on you because they have to come back to remember why they did it. So, another compliment to you, if I
Yeah.
may, on your approach and how you just continue to, shine that light and then help others, find their light and then shine equally as bright because at the end of the day, that's what life's all about is helping people find their power.
Well, and I think everyone should realize you don't have to be Iron Man. You don't have to walk hot coals. If you've been in a relationship for a while,
Mm-hmm.
if you're okay with yourself and you've been through some stuff in your life, which everybody has at least a little bit,
Yeah.
if you discipline to do one change and it's working this year,
Yeah.
isn't that enough? Like,
100%.
it doesn't have to be this big thing. If it is, awesome. But everybody should honor, and this is the message for people watching this,
Mm-hmm.
honor where you're at and give yourself that, when you ask me, like, hey, I'd like to honor, and I said, yeah, we don't take enough time to honor, our achievements or the distances we're willing to go ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Honor that distance because we all have something to share. We all have an impact to make. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be with a million people.
Mm-hmm.
If it's with one person, that's enough.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I forget what the quote is, but it's something about, being able to bounce between the different perspectives, right? So find something that you can appreciate for today while it's also something that'll keep you moving forward for tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah,
And
I
so
love
I
that.
think it's super important. So yeah, I appreciate you definitely like taking the time to, share your journey on resilience from the womb and all the different ways that you've been able to kind of like ebb and flow and just create this unbelievable, business community life with all of these different lessons that you help teach other people and just do incredible work. And so
Thank
from
you.
my heart to yours, thank you. And thanks for also giving um, a roadmap, a new path for anybody who might be born a little bit premature and might have that mindset with they can't do it. You've just paved the way for them to say, well, if you can, they can too.
That would be that would be a whole life well served if that happens to just one person on from this call. So
Yeah,
thank
I
you.
mean, I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I want to say it was something like 200,000. There's 200,000 premature births every year.
Mhm.
So that's not a small market. There's a lot of people.
Nope, it's not.
There's a lot of
We all
people.
have it in us. We can do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So parting words are enjoy every moment of where you are and find
Yes.
something to appreciate. And what is your favorite quote?
It's Gandhi's, be the change you wish to see in the world. And I expand that to when you become the change,
Mhm.
everything and everyone around you will change. I've seen it happen.
100%, 100%. Okay, so fun fact. Do you want to know why we're also friends?
What's that?
Do you want to know why we are also friends?
Why? Is that
Because
your
my
favorite quote?
my very first business card had that quote on it.
We have so many parallel things. It's crazy, you guys. We'll have to talk about it in a different different video, but I love it.
Absolutely.
We nothing's by accident. I do
No,
believe that.
our paths are definitely flowing, and I think it's great. It was, a very funny story because I walked into a meeting, and coming from Asia, you have to have business cards, otherwise people won't talk to you. And they wouldn't give me business cards because I wasn't senior enough. And I said, forget it. I'll just go and get my own business cards. But I didn't have authorization to use the company logos, and I didn't want to get myself in trouble. So I got the most obnoxious things in the world. At the time, I liked pink. So I had pink and they had swirls or flowers or something on it. Then it had my name.
Hey,
I didn't even have a title. It just says, be the change you wish to see in the world.
I love
And
it. Here's just large and in charge, right? I love that. So
I'm an intern, but here, hi.
no, that's
So
perfect. Hey,
thank you so much. And how,
I'm glad we met again. It's been half a lifetime since the last one.
absolutely, absolutely. And what is the best way that people can get in touch with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm real active there. You can go to my website, which is just my name, jacobroig.com. But
Cool.
anyway, just search me out. I'm all over the internet. I will respond, I promise.
Perfect. We will go ahead and make sure to put links and contact details in both the video itself and then also down in the bio. So, Jacob, thank you so much for your
Thank you.
time and your energy and just sharing your story. And again, you're absolutely incredible. You're divine and you're another representation of resilience.
Yep. I appreciate you too, Jess, and I look forward to the next time we can talk. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Ciao.